The Dwarf Kingdoms was much smaller, and it was a bit weird because half the Dwarf Kingdom was occupied by humans here in this little bay, and the Dwarf Kingdoms. I don't know why I called it kingdoms because there was only like one king, and like this was their kingdom. I decided that for such a important race with the history, which I haven't really discussed on the channel or indeed currently up to this date on the website yet. They occupied such a small space, which is basically just here, which also in a more detailed map looked a lot like Mordor because it was ringed by these, and it had like a mountain in the middle, which wasn't a volcano, but it was entirely different. Another reason is that here also was a plain of dust, much kind of like the Vast, which was like a plain of ash. There was a plain of dust here, volcanic ash and dust. And, you know, too similar. I'd rather keep the one up here. So over here, I've stretched the Dwarven Kingdom to include all of this. Vordal is still there, and it's still got its ring around it, but it's much less like Mordor. And I made like all of this the Dwarven Kingdom. I also made it so that it was like destroyed a lot more by the events with the what happened in Greel, and I like that a lot better than rather they've just been set up here doing nothing, you know, with this little bit of pocket of land up there. And I didn't like the idea of the seafaring humans there, so I've merged that here, and I've mixed it with Rune. So there's no reason to have, you know, humans in the dwarf area, even though I don't really like segregating it too much, but it didn't make a lot of sense. You know, the dwarf kingdoms and humans occupied 3/4 of it, you know. Rune is still pretty much how it was, so obviously it has moved positions. Orendor is also almost where it was. I mean, it's sort of like Orendor, Rune, Orendor, and the Outlands, and it's kind of the same, you know, Rune, Orendor, and the Outlands. Now, Orendor here is a fallen kingdom, and I never really worked out why that would be. But I decided that down here, it's not marked, so I think I forgot, but there's the Land of the Dead, and so that's the undead place. You know, I thought it'd be cool to have like undead here and demons here, like coming up from the south, because this is where all the bad magics are, towards the South Pole and the North Pole. But I couldn't find a reason why there'd be so many bodies down here to create a Land of the Dead, because even though the dark magic is there, you need people in order to make that. And Magador, it's actually like in there, is a very sparsely populated place, so there'd have to be some sort of civilization down there in order for there to be like the bodies in the first place. And it's freezing cold down here, you know. This is like almost Antarctica, this bit down here. This is like freezing. There's no way there could be a vast civilization up there, you know. It's you just don't get that, you know. It's too cold for a vast number of people to live there. So I thought, all right, we'll scrap that. Don't have that there. Instead, Orendor, I needed a reason for it to be like a fallen kingdom. Fair enough. It became the kingdom of the dead, the Land of the Dead. So I've cut out Land of the Dead there, and I've also got the story for, well, not really the story, but I've got the theme for Orendor. Kept the Outlands, kept Nethica. Sigurd up here was the Vikings. They were giant people. They would be about 7 feet tall, but they'd wear furs and like mead, and they're basically Vikings. And giant Vikings, yes, but Vikings nonetheless. And, you know, unoriginal. It's very hard to be original. I'm going to make another video about this. I've decided to open a discussion about originality in fantasy, because it's very hard to be original. But I thought, you know, Sumerians, Vikings, same kind of thing, you know, and I didn't feel the need to keep it in there, because it was such a traditional thing that I wanted to keep away from, so didn't bother. Gnoll Country was a kind of an offshoot of the Outlands, where a Gnoll is basically a dog and a man, or a hyena and a man, something like that. And that's That's fair enough. So I decided there was lots of dogs around here, and they eventually, or maybe men or whatever, and they all got warped by the powers of magic, and that's how that happened. I took it out because that's what the Outland is, essentially, but it's just like packed more with gnolls. Also, I decided to eradicate gnolls from my universe, from my world. So it just didn't work anymore. And I thought, you got the Outlands. That's what the Outland is. It's full of these freaks. So you didn't need the Gnoll country. You didn't need it. So I took it out. And Dalcian was a frontier island, like a little human kingdom, much like Magador. And so I took Dalcian out because we didn't need it. We have Magador, so there was no real need for it. Dalcian and Magador, they were almost the same country, both on extremes, like cold down here, cold up here, both struggling against either the land of the dead or against the gnolls always attacking. So yeah, I cut it. So and Dalcian was a lot more developed than Magador. So I've just taken what I've got for Dalcian, or at least I will, and pretty much merge it with what I got from Magador. So that's going to create a very detailed world. Well, detailed land anyway, because now I've got the ideas from two places and I'm merging them into one. So, job done. And you're still keeping the theme of the two islands, or no, the islands, but the two lands, which is, the desperate frontiers town. You don't need two of them, you only need the one. So that's what I've got. Also, something that I forgot to mention is right here, like the land of the dead. There's like this slip of land here, and the dead's always like surging forward. I loved the idea of having a giant fortress that's constantly under siege by these armies of the dead that are surging. And again, it didn't fit with it being so far south. Where would these bodies come from? Initially. So. I mean, I tried to create some background to it, but it didn't. I was never very happy with it. It didn't really work. So so in here, this is there. It's the same thing, except Rune's got it now rather than Magador. I mean, Magador's got enough to deal with now with Griel. So there's just this little slip of land, and yeah, they have to constantly guard it from the undead that are probably not purposefully like invading, but they're always a nuisance. They're always there, and so there's this fortress. That's like the hub of the defense against this wave of zombies and skeletons and ghouls and cool stuff like that. And yeah, that's so pretty much what I did was just cut the stuff I didn't like. I didn't like the jungle. I didn't like I liked the Aetia, but they were a little bit too much like the Griel in appearance. So I decided to scrap them and have their nature become the elves. So now I have the elves sorted out with what their little quirk is compared to the traditional stuff. Cut out Kuranda because it was too much like the Outlands. Cut out Dalcian and merged it with Magador. Cut out Gnoll Country, replaced it and merged it with the Outlands because it was the same thing technically. Cut out Sigurd. Cut out the Vast, and you're pretty much that's what I did. And I find that now, having got rid of 7 or so countries that I would have to write about, this is a lot more manageable. And I don't think that I have lost anything from the other set. I admit that the petrified forest was kind of a neat thing, but then I think that would be in Griel, because when the bad thing happened, like petrified forest, so like maybe like stretching up here as well, I really like the idea of like a dead forest that was just like pretty much exactly how it was, but it's been left for thousands of years, and it's untouched and it's bad things there now. I really like that idea. So I mean, it's still in there, but it's just not part of the Vast. I've integrated that into Griel, if you like. And that's what I did. So essentially what I did was cut out the stuff that I didn't really like at all and merge the stuff that I did like but was similar to other things. You see what I mean? So I don't know whether this will help anyone or not, but it was good for me to go through it in my head and yeah, just take a look at what I've done and what I did to reduce it down and filter it, but still keep everything pretty much intact from what it was, because it was too much before. It was way too much for me to do, and I was intimidated by it. That's the word. I was intimidated by it, and so I just gave up on it for a number of months, and I'm back now, and it's looking a lot better. So if you're looking for advice, I would say try and keep it small. Don't be too ambitious, because although it's not impossible, it's very hard for you to work on everything. So it's easy to keep it small and concise. You can always expand it later. I mean, you know, I can't deny that I don't miss the massive scope of it, but it's a lot more manageable now, and it's better. I've got a much better feeling about it as it is now. So I hope that helped, or was informative, or somewhat interesting to someone. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next video. Toodaloo.